Hey there. So they say the only constant in the journey of an entrepreneur is learning. So on ChetChat today, we showcase someone who's made this learning the center of his journey. So meet Satya, the founder of Career Launcher, who started this company with a few thousands of rupees way back in the 1990s and has today made it one of the largest coaching, tutoring, educational company that there is. So Satya, it's an extreme pleasure to be at your office in Delhi and chatting with you.
Thank you,
So
Chetna. Thank you very much.
So tell me, you did this MBA and you worked for, a very, very high profile corporate job, which was at that time considered the best thing anybody could do.
Sure, yeah.
What prompted you to leave all of those beautiful pots of gold at the end of the rainbow that were almost certain to get into this field where nothing was known?
Actually, that's a very good point and a good place to start the conversation. When we were graduating from the B school, first thing that I hoped was that I will graduate in 2 years.
Right.
And the focus prior to that in my life was so much on cricket that it was impossible for me to imagine that I will not goof up inside the IIM. And then when I got into the corporate, specifically speaking, 3 things that I wanted to accomplish in life. One was to buy a Ray-Ban for myself.
Sunglasses.
Yeah, sunglasses. Second was to be able to sit in a flight.
Okay,
fly an aeroplane.
Yeah, of course.
And the third was to go and stay in a 5-star hotel.
Okay.
Now, all of this quickly happened in the first 5-6 months.
Fantastic.
Okay. Then you quickly realize that all of these don't satisfy the inner soul in you.
Yeah.
And that is when I began to question, what is it that I would enjoy? And when I looked at the CEO of Ranbaxy at that time, and it was a very smart company, one of the earliest to go global as an Indian company.
Yes.
And our CEO, Mr. D.S. Brar, was the 70s batch of FMS.
Right.
Which means, to me, it looked like if I do everything right,
Right,
don't goof up,
Yes.
it will take me 30 years and I might get there.
Yes.
I thought, what is the shortcut?
Okay.
So I thought the shortcut was to start your own company
Okay.
and then print on your card that you are the chairman and managing director and get started. So
No, you're joking.
that is how CL started. No, I'm being very honest with you. It was as random as that.
Okay.
It was the prehistoric era, as you know. 9 out of the 10 words that we use today in the world of entrepreneurship weren't born there.
Absolutely.
Entrepreneurship wasn't
Itself
a term.
wasn't a term.
Yeah,
Yes.
venture capital, funding, scaling, technology, disruption, all of the very recent terms.
Nothing.
So at that time,
It was अपना business start कर रहे हैं.
हाँ, और उसमें भी कोचिंग कर रहा है तो वो इंफ्रा डिग था.
Correct.
After IIM, if you're doing coaching, means you must be the dregs of the society. So I named the program personality development program.
Okay.
Focused on the second stage of the selection process and named the company Career Launcher. And my batchmates who used to help me over the weekends, they would say, साले तेरे पास पैसे है नहीं और तू एक प्रोडक्ट लॉन्च कर रहा है, एक कंपनी लॉन्च कर रहा है, 2 से काम नहीं चलेगा. But we are not those who have listened to people that easily. So
We did what we wanted to
Yeah.
and we reached such heights.
that's right. So that's what the start.
Yes, so having started, you're saying ultimately don't listen to people, do what your heart says. But were there moments of difficulty at the start to really get that traction?
Of course, it was, you are trying to move a mountain with your shoulders. And entrepreneurship is not about rationality. Entrepreneurship is about the coming together of the irrational, passionate imagination of yours that has to be nurtured by your ability to bring it to the plane of rationality. But if the conversation starts on the plane of rationality, there is no moving forward.
Okay.
Then you would only be the guy chasing the next best job that gives you 20% more than today, and you will continue so long on the plane of rationality. When you look back, you will tell yourself that I was an idiot.
You think fear of failure is what differentiated someone who almost started and never did?
Absolutely. I think 99% of our lives, what we do, what we don't do is from fear of failure. I heard this acronym at times saying that fear is an acronym to what is called as, false evidence appearing real.
Good one. I
Yeah,
like that. Yeah,
yeah.
false is
Yeah.
So Satya, a lot of my viewers watching the show feel that they are passionate, they have great ideas, but when they take those ideas to the client is not always willing to pay them for it.
Sure.
So the question is, how many free frogs do I have to kiss before I find the right prince,
Actually, I would look at it a little differently than calling that as a free client. An entrepreneur, while his greatest skill is imagination and translating that into a workable product or a service, he or she needs to be handheld by somebody who's completely anchored in today.
Okay.
And that is obviously a client who you think should pay for your service. In which case, the first step that entrepreneur should do is to sign them up as alpha customers.
Okay.
They are your co-creating partners. They are your R&D resources, and give it to them free. Listen to them with all humility. Persuade them with your imagination. But you have to get him to a point where he gives you confidence to then go and sign up a beta customer. And when the alpha and the beta customers are happy enough, the first question should come from them, saying that, you've done so much for me, let's start formalizing a relationship.
Okay, so talk about some of the stumbling blocks when you got going. How about hiring people? How difficult was that with a name that people hadn't heard about or a business proposition that people didn't understand?
Right.
How hard was it for you to get people on board?
Actually, not hard at all. Not hard at all. In fact, I have 4 of my batchmates as founding team members.
Wow.
All 93 batch. And I will have to multiply my CGPA by 2 or 3 to get to their CGPA. So they also were much more endowed than I was, academically speaking. All of them came at ridiculously small salaries.
Yes.
And hopefully we made up for it through a little bit of a wealth creation. So I go back to this couplet by Allama Iqbal, where he says, खुदी को कर बुलंद इतना कि हर तकदीर से पहले खुदा बंदे से खुद पूछे बता तेरी रज़ा क्या है.
Wow.
Look at what Google has done. People,
Right.
after they quit the company, they write ex-Googler. That's what a brand should do.
Yes.
And the last thing I have ever believed is that people work for money or incentives. That's a hygiene.
Yes.
But if you're there and thereabouts, a lot of other intangibles matter a lot.
So it's very refreshing because nowadays I see people, they'll put the social media strategy up almost before they've put their whole product development strategy out as well.
Sure.
And often you feel like saying to them, yes, social media is important, but make the core so strong that the rest of it becomes easy for you to then implement.
Yeah, absolutely. And I strongly believe that if I were to restart CL today, I won't be aping myself. What I did then was an interface between how the world was and the resources that I had. Today, it's a completely different world. Today, any new entity that comes into existence as an entrepreneurial venture, if it cannot execute its plan end to end from a 100 square feet space, I would think it's an outdated engineered model.
Wow.
All that you do outside the 100 square feet should be the bonus. It should bring additional buzz or growth, and all of this should be able to build sitting in one place by the power of the product.
Yes.
And the way it solves a social problem or a social need in a new way.
So Satya, you started with MBA prep,
Right.
way back in the 90s.
Right.
And there were a couple of other names that were doing this. So how did you differentiate yourself back then?
Okay, a couple of key things that I did was, one, most of them were focused on giving long distance,
Yes.
low touch, low price model.
Right.
And here I was as a 23, 24-year-old, fresh out of college. I had not met an IIM alumnus before I went to an IIM.
Okay, yeah.
And we thought that anyone who goes to IIM would kind of walk like Lord Rama. he would have halo around his head, and I don't know if I am that good. So which means there was nobody to guide you.
Yes.
And that was my basic differentiator. I said that I went to an IIM,
Right.
and I'll tell you how you can go to an IIM.
wonderful. Yes.
And that led to the buzz.
Yes.
So in Delhi, over the next couple of years, we got to a point where you could be preparing any which way for the written test. But for the PDP, you would come only to CL.
Okay. So you could slowly, you got that
Yes,
core
we got a
USP.
lion's share in the results.
But looking at this sector, this is very exciting as a starting point and a differentiator, but it's been a long journey.
Yes.
There have been lots of companies that came in, went out, etc.
Yeah.
How did you continue to differentiate and survive and thrive actually?
Yeah, one of the things that has helped us is perhaps a little bit of our appetite for growth.
Okay.
Which means that we had to do it in spite of not having any success stories. I recall when Intel Capital invested money in CL in 2001, one of the earliest or the first story of venture money into a test prep company, we were still one city, 4 locations, 2,000 students entity.
Okay.
Which means in this journey we had done 2 or 3 things which were not attempted earlier. One, the brand became larger than the individual.
Okay.
So I would walk into a center, if I don't introduce myself as Satya, founder of Career Launcher, a student might not know.
Amazing.
So the brand had happened, technology had happened. We were the first guys to implement the systems and processes of scaling it up. So we had implemented ERP homegrown by 2001-2002.
Okay.
That helped a lot. Which means you are able to now translate one business argument that I will have an entrepreneur come, take my brand, take my material, take my technology and implement it in Kanpur, Varanasi, Dehradun, Tirupati, etc. Which we could do.
Yeah, like a franchising.
Absolutely. It was an unfranchised business. There was no franchise at that time.
Right.
15 years later, even today, there are only 2 players in test prep who have been able to franchise it successfully. We scaled using product diversification, geographical diversification, lot of acquisitions. Today we are in 200 locations. We are the only guys who have all the 15 product categories of test prep. I think in the next few years, India, a lot of consolidations will happen and a couple of companies will emerge which will go and crack or grab the opportunity called broader educational services, not just in India, but in the regional geography and maybe globally in the next 10 to 15 years.
Right, and I think you're poised just rightly for it.
We just hope that we are in the race, we are good enough to do that. That somebody will do it, I have absolutely no doubt in my mind. We just want to make sure that we have a good shot at it.
Yeah, sure. So tell me, people watching the show wanting to be in this space of edu-tech, education, which as we discussed is very fragmented.
Right.
So what would be your advice to them today?
I would say 2 things. One is build absolutely infinite appetite for bad news. And that's the first rule of entrepreneurship, not just education, which means it's not a path paved with gold until you survive long enough. Second is, while you keep that, you shouldn't lose your optimism, your imagination. You should have a lot of ability to question the status quo, because every entrepreneur has actually dismissed the status quo, disagreed with it and said that there is a new order that I can imagine. And the way it is different from a job is that you could blame somebody and get away.
Right.
Here, the more you take on your chest, the more you own up failures, the more you grow, because you now know you have to make a shift, the more you build credibility with your team members. They look at you with respect. They look at you as a person who doesn't shift blames, he takes it. And that becomes a good culture in the organization.
Right. And also what you've displayed as a company, adapting. There's been so much change in the past 20 years.
That's the only constant. And it needs an absolute clarity in your mind that the only unchanging part of business is your core purpose and core values. Products, markets, strategies, people, tactics, everything changes, technologies, everything changes, everything has to change.
So Satya, just as you said, with the company, we don't know 20 years later what it's going to be when we start off.
Right.
Similarly, sometimes we don't know what we are going to be 20 years later as a person.
So true, so true.
So when you look back today, do you see some major changes in you which you probably didn't anticipate also?
Yes, yes, absolutely phenomenal, phenomenal. Many of them. Some core have remained, but many things have changed. For instance, that I would be an entrepreneur and I would build a company coming from a family, the notorious Tambrams who do nothing but, they've all done their jobs, and so that itself was an unanticipated path, not too planned.
Yes.
So that is one. Second is somewhere along the line I also fell in love with Urdu poetry.
Yes.
And picked up Urdu as a language. I ended up publishing a couple of books.
Really? Wow.
Which has gone on to attract good singers to sing that. And my pen name, as you call it in Urdu, is called Takhallus. I've got a Takhallus called Muasir. And recently I had a couple of visitors who came to meet Muasir. And then when they got to know that Muasir is Satya, they were absolutely flabbergasted by the whole possibility. They said some crazy thing is happening.
But fabulous, you told us earlier about cricket.
Yeah.
And now we talk about poetry.
Right.
And our viewers would actually love to sample some of this exotic poetry.
Yeah, sure. As you say, ijazat ho to main suna deta hu. This is about the infiniteness of ourselves that we don't acknowledge. Is kuch to hoon shayad. And it goes as मैं एक अपार समंदर हूँ जिसकी गहराइयों से मैं खुद अपरिचित हूँ, सहर का सुर्ख उफ़क़ हूँ कभी जिसकी बिसात से मैं खुद लावाकिफ़ हूँ, मुझसे मेरा तारुफ न पूछ, मैं कल कोई और था आज कोई और हूँ, जिस्म का शहर वही रहा शायद, बाशिंदे मगर बदलते रहे हर कुछ अरसे के बाद, मैं की तलाश में मैं खुद हूँ जबकि मुझको भी ये ख़बर है कि यह तलाश बेमायनी है शायद, फ़िलहाल यह शनास मेरे लिए काफ़ी है कि कुछ तो हूँ शायद।
वाह वाह, this is amazing, and it is so beautifully, it actually depicts your entire life's journey.
Absolutely, it's so true.
Yeah,
So,
it is what we've been talking all this while.
yeah, I believe strongly that we have this responsibility to be able to connect with the 17, 19, 21-year-olds and tell them that, be yourself. You are infinite. God has gifted you with some perfection in some area. And that's what is my core motivation to found CL, to be here all the time, because I think that gives me the core sustenance.
How inspiring. I'm thinking the people watching the show would love to actually hear this and believe this about themselves. A lot of us actually don't believe in this. We don't believe we're all the same.
Yeah,
we think he was exceptionally talented.
Yes,
I'm not
yes,
going to be able to do it.
Yes, unfortunately, or perhaps just out of sheer unknowingly, successful people don't talk about their vulnerabilities.
Yeah.
Don't talk as much about the failures with the empathy to connect with people who are aspirers. And I think that's where some stuff that you're doing, I think, is enormous value. Interviewers getting it out of an interviewee is the magic. And I congratulate you for being able to do that.
Oh, thank you. But there's so much humility. I've been hearing you all this while talk about how you take your failures on, how you own them, how you feel that, you're part of a limitless universe, and how you're doing things and you're not a great soul, but you're just doing your purpose. I hear you and I feel that is indeed greatness.
No, thank you very much.
So I want to come back to your cricket.
Yeah, sure. My greatest failure. When somebody asks me for my introduction and I tell them that I am the founder, chairman emeritus of India's Failed Cricketers Association. There's some learnings that I have picked up from there and did not repeat that in my next innings. But I was fortunate enough to be able to play out one full innings of failure before I was 20.
I mean, you call it failure, I call it destiny. Some other place needed you more than cricket, and which is perhaps why that didn't work out.
Yeah.
But talking about Anandi, your daughter, I read somewhere that you had homeschooled her.
Yes.
So talk about that. You're in the education sector.
Yeah.
And you choose to disregard all of them and say, we'll homeschool her. What about that?
Yeah, it was a very interesting, quick agreement point that Uma and I had. You know, a husband and wife, you seldom agree on something very quickly.
Eureka moment.
Yeah, that's right. So we just said that's good. So we did that for almost 4-5 years. Nandu would be with me in my office, or she would be with Uma at our school. You know, as career launcher, we run Indus World Schools.
Okay.
And then after some time, she kind of ended up making friends in the school, started sitting in those classes, and then we were like one step away from she saying, you know, now
why don't I just wear the uniform and come here every day?
Exactly. Quite literally, it was that.
But it's been fantastic talking to you. I mean, we could go on and on, but for YouTube telling us,
No, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
I also enjoyed it, and all the best for something that you're doing, and with your kind of background, I'm sure you had a million other things as options to do. That you're doing this is very, very good for the society, for the youngsters, and I wish you all the best. If there's anything that I can do to make it better for you, I'll be very happy to do that.
Thank you so much, Satya.
Thank you very
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Hey, I hope you were as inspired by Satya as I was. And if you have any questions or clarifications that you want to get from me or from Satya, put them all down at the bottom at the comment section of this video. And don't forget to press that little red button and subscribe to the show. And happy watching.